There's a place, Grant.
What?
There's a place.
Is it a place that you find your lost dreams?
It is a place where you find your lost dreams. It's called Nitrogen Sports Poker.
And at Nitrogen Sports Poker Room, that's where you can play with the poker guys, but you have to use the link in the description of this video or else you don't even get to see the tournaments that we participate in.
You can't find your lost dreams because they don't exist.
And that's too bad. Now, Nitrogen is a Bitcoin-only site, which means super fast withdrawals and deposits. I'm talking 5 to 20 minutes. Get on Nitrogen, get you some poker, use the link, and have fun with us.
All the things.
Yeah, do it. Antonio Esfandiari is fun to watch. A lot of that is because he talks to his opponents. And his opponent is going to engage him. His opponent is an amateur named Rob Yong. And he's going to say some pretty cool stuff in the hand and make some very weird plays on Poker Night in America.
Yeah, now, to be clear, Rob Yong definitely has money. He, I believe, owns an online poker room even in Europe. So he's been around poker a lot and, has played with Antonio before, for sure.
Right, and this hand gets very strange by the river. I'm going to say that, and that's probably why it was suggested by Max Sawyer and Ben Jones-Groves. You know what to do. Tweet at us, include a YouTube link.
Yes, indeed. Also, timestamp it.
Yeah, do that.
That's important. We're going to break down this hand as we go, so get ready for some analysis.
It's nice when you have a good game.
I just kind of take it easy last year because I was getting married like 5 days afterwards.
Yeah, I got it.
But I didn't really nail it, if I'm honest.
I am nothing.
Who's big blind?
Oh,
Frenchie.
Frenchie! You're playing tight, so it's easy for me to fold.
Frenchie! You'll loosen up.
Antonio with a needle before he comes in for a raise with ace-5 suited.
They don't know about my Frenchie when he's losing.
You're right.
They only know about him when he's winning. It's the best show in town.
I'm dying to play a hand. Just dying.
And our two tightest players, Kurpen and Safdie, get out of the way.
Me and my English mate.
Tight is right, guys. Remember that. Ten, 10, 5, two pair for Antonio,
It's like the last flop.
and nothing for Yong.
Now you gotta float. I know standard procedure. See what comes next and then see if you can rep it, the whole BS. I know. It's not my first rodeo.
Antonio baiting him into a call.
Did you read a book? I'm starting to like you actually now.
You what?
I didn't like you at first, but I'm starting to
Now
like
you're
you.
starting to like me?
Really? There's someone that does not like Antonio?
It's also okay to give up. Just save the, whatever money's gonna cost, this and that. It's always that.
I've never seen
Well, you
anybody
got a
that
10,
does not
huh?
like Antonio.
No, but nobody likes the guy that won 18 million in a tournament before they meet him. Yeah, I get it all the time. Like, I thought you was going to be a prick, but you're actually all right. I'm like, okay, nice, very good. How judgmental of you.
I'm just going to find out where I am.
Great, 7,000.
I love this, by the way. The table talk,
Oh.
The speech, I like
Oh,
you,
look.
my
Oh,
friend.
look.
And then a
He's-
raise.
He's quiet now.
Oh,
This is the first time
Ken's
he
good.
stopped talking.
Antonio makes the call.
Before we start talking about the weird plays by Rob Yong so far, let's talk a little bit about speech play, as Will Kassouf would call it, because Antonio is a guy who likes to engage with his opponents, especially if they're amateurs like Rob, and he's doing so successfully here, but Rob is throwing off some interesting vibes with his table talk.
I mean, I love what everyone's saying, honestly. Antonio giving the speech.
I know standard procedure. See what comes next and then see if you can rep it, the whole BS. I know. It's not my first rodeo.
Yeah, but look at what Rob says right before he raises. Take a look.
I'm just going to find out where I am.
Now, what does that say to you? Think back to playing against amateurs at your local poker club or a casino. What does that say to you?
And to be clear, Rob Yong is an amateur at this table.
Right. Oh, for sure he is. And to me, that says, I have a really strong hand.
Yeah.
That's what people say when they flop huge and they don't want you to go away and they're trying to act casual about it, right?
It is 100% that. So how in the world does Rob actually have king high and a total bluff? When he says this, it almost doesn't make any sense.
It's pretty good. It's pretty
great.
good speech play. However, what's not good is everything else Rob Yong is doing. Why are you calling with king 7 offsuit pre-flop? This is a disaster. It's categorically bad.
Yeah.
The raise on the flop, I guess it's okay.
I think that's much more defensible and at least reasonable. I mean, if we're going to call king 7 off on the flop, we get a flop like this. if we just throw it away, it's weird.
Well,
at
why
this
don't we
point.
just flat and then rep later?
That is a
That
better
seems like
play.
a little bit of a better play.
I would expect Rob Yong most of the time is going to flat his tens, not raise his tens. Going to flat his full houses, not raise his full houses, at least most of the time, right?
Right, but Antonio knows his customer because he can't fold this hand. This hand is way too strong to fold to Rob Yong here, obviously.
But let's be clear. The turn and river may make it very hard for Antonio to hold on if Rob wants to keep throwing chips at this pot. Like, there's so many bad cards for Antonio on the turn and the river.
Right, but Antonio clearly wants to play a big pot against Rob because he bet pot on the flop with a hand that you wouldn't expect anybody to ever bet pot with. Antonio must know something about Rob, and clearly he got raised by a much worse hand, so he knows something.
I mean, the speech play maybe induced it, too. It's saying, don't call and try and rep it that way. I know that one. You're going to have to do it a different way, and Rob Yong is now trying to do it differently, right?
Yeah.
Yong needs a king or a 7. That
That's good.
is not a king or a 7. Antonio improves to a full house.
Bet a 5 is good.
But Yong is saying he has a 10.
I bet you're right.
So if he wants to continue to sell this story and fire 2 more streets, maybe he gets Antonio off of it. But honestly, I just can't see that happening.
Check.
Yong checks back. Jack river. Now Antonio knows Yong is weak. If he had a strong hand, he'd bet the turn. So the question is, how can he make the most money? He's going to check and let Yong have one last shot to try and fire. Looks like that might work out.
Bet 50,000.
The plot thickens, ladies and gentlemen. The plot thickens. It's not often I lay down full houses.
I am starting to like you though.
It's not often I lay down two. I mean, it's like you're making it so obvious that you have it that it's starting to make me think you don't have it. You know?
This is almost a 3 times the pot bet. He's saying he has a 10. And now Antonio is put into a terrible situation. But at the end of the day, he does have a full house. And Antonio does not like the fold button. Antonio throws the chips at his opponent,
Good call.
but is good. So those are coming right back.
Oh, don't you hate that if you're Rob Yong when the guy who talks all the time throws the chips into your stack and says, oh, you win, go ahead. It's such a needle. It's like when you prepay for a bet and you have to pay double the amount back.
Oh, my favorite.
It's the worst. It's the worst. But obviously there's a lot to talk about on this turn and river. Let's talk about the turn first.
Yes.
Where it goes check, check. That's interesting.
I don't know what's going on. I don't like it at all. I think you felt better about it than I did on the podcast.
From Rob Yong's perspective.
Yeah, of course. Only from Antonio, of course, is going to check and probably just going to check call the turn. But Rob Yong raised the flop, and if he's going to rep it on the river, most of the time you'd be betting the turn, right? And by the way, can't Rob also be repping trip 5s here? He says I'm raising to find out where I'm at. If he was telling the truth, now he's got a full house.
Right, but Antonio could have a 10, Jonathan. Think about that.
Okay, fine, he can have a 10, but you know what else? He can also not have a 10,
Well,
right?
here's the thing that I think. I think it's actually okay to check back the turn because he'd be scared of scaring away a lot of Antonio's ace highs, which against Rob Yong he might call on the flop. A lot of Antonio's pocket pairs, which against Rob Yong he would definitely call on the flop. And if he bets the turn, he's afraid Antonio is just going to go away now. That's a possibility here.
Okay, but since we actually want Antonio to go away, I just don't like this story, is I guess what I'm getting at. Because what makes sense if you look at the greater line here, not just this decision? This decision can work in maybe a certain context, but here we are in the river, we're suddenly betting 3 times the pot. How does that all fit together?
He's trying to make up for missed value on the turn.
Well, we could have just bet the turn, right? I mean, it seems like if you want to bomb the river, it also makes sense to me. Let's bet the turn, and then we can bomb the river. You can still 3x it. It costs more money, but we win more of the time.
I generally agree with you. I'm just trying to say I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to check the turn.
Fair enough.
But let's shut up about the turn because who cares? It's the river that matters here.
Fair enough.
Because I think this is the biggest bet relative to the pot we've ever seen on the breakdown.
Wow. It's
no, the Tom.
Maybe in a cash game.
Because the Tom Don Phillock was cash game, but I'm not sure if it is bigger.
I don't know. Anyway,
it's huge. It's more than 3 times the pot. So Rob Yong is essentially saying, I have a 10 or better. He's never doing this with a 5. I think we came to that conclusion on our podcast.
I feel like maybe once in a blue moon he's doing it with a 5.
I'm not as sure.
I'm not as sure as you are, but I agree most of the time he's got a 10 or nothing here.
Right, and it seems like maybe 10 jack even, because that's the extra nuts now, and that's the type of hand you would try to get max value out of another 10 from.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's Rob Yong, and Antonio, as you saw, called pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So what was the flaw in Rob's plan here?
I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense, really.
He beat me. Straight up. Pay him. pay that man his money.
Right now, I understand sometimes people will take this line and have it. I get that,
Yeah.
right? And actually, to me, like quad fives makes a lot more sense on this board, taking this line,
Right.
than a hand like a random 10, like ace 10 or something like that. To me, or even jack 10. I would expect those hands to bet a lot of turns. Quad fives, you can understand more why they're checking back because we block so much of the board.
Interesting that you called ace 10 a random 10. That seems like the 10 to me. I don't know if
Okay.
that's a random 10.
Well, I mean, on the river, all the 10s are the same,
Yeah.
right? Except for jack 10.
Except for
That's
jack
all.
10, of course. So, yeah, Rob is telling a particular story. He's saying, I really want you to call with a big hand because I have a monster hand. That's essentially what he's saying.
Right.
However, his reputation is not good enough for him to do that against a guy who's as astute as Antonio Esfandiari. Esfandiari, look how quickly he calls. It doesn't take much time for him to just be like, here you go.
I mean, in fairness to Antonio, he has maybe the perfect check calling hand in the world, right?
Yeah.
Of all the hands you'd ever have to check call with, this is the one.
Although
right?
I believe Antonio would check a 10 as well because it's Rob Yong, and Rob Yong is likely to be bluffing. Like, here's Rob Yong's major problem. He is bluff heavy here. Antonio
Yes.
knows that, and for that reason, I believe Antonio would check all of his strength and hope that Rob does something like this. And what a miracle that he bets this much. How amazing is that?
I mean, it's a miracle as long as Antonio makes the call, which he does. Now, he also, by the way, is doing a little speech play here as well. If you watch, he says this.
It's not often I lay down full houses.
Just trying to get a little bit of a read, saying, I have a full house. How do you feel about that, right? I don't know that Rob necessarily gives anything away. And I think Antonio's probably calling, unless Rob accidentally turns one of his cards over or something like that, really. But in the end, I feel like this is just a very straightforward call for Antonio.
Even though it's 3 times the pot.
It's just such a crazy bet by Rob Yong. And I'll give him this. This is the way you win once we get to the river.
Yeah.
The only way to win this hand is to bet huge,
Yeah, 10K
right?
is not going to work.
No, Antonio's calling with ace high.
Maybe 300K works. I don't know.
I think 300K might work.
Yeah. Next time, bet 300K, Rob Yong.
300K into 16. It's about time we see a 19X.
I would love
raise
to see
anyway. 18X. All right, what do you think? Was this a reasonable line by Rob Yong, and did Antonio just sniff it out because he's so good?
No.
You don't think so? Well, I'm asking what they think, not what you think. We already know what you think.
No, I
man.
understand. Okay.
Okay. What do you guys think? Do you think this line should have worked? Is this actually a bad call by Antonio because you would think at best you're chopping and you're almost always losing? Certainly that's true against the value, but are there enough bluffs? Let us know in the comments. We're totally interested to see what you have to say about that.
Yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say, and we'd love to have you watch all of our cash game breakdowns because cash games create situations like this where people are throwing 50K at the pot when there's 16K in the middle. I mean, not that frequently, but we've had a lot of really cool plays in cash games. If you want to check all of those out, click right up there.
I mean, we have like lots of Tom Dwan hands.
Oh, those are good.
One of my favorite hands of all time. Actually, some players just want to watch the world burn. Matt Kirk against Andrew Roble. One of the craziest. Got to watch that one for sure. For sure. Also check out our podcast where we spend a good 40 some odd minutes talking about this hand, going over each stage of it, the hand, each street. Do we like this play? Do we not? Should Rob Yong be doing something different? Should Antonio be doing something different?
Doing a lot more killing of Rob Yong's pre-flop play.
Yeah, we destroyed that for quite a while, as you can understand with the old King 7 off. And if you like this video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel.